students in its Learn After School program. Congratulations to Executive Director Lieben Michael, Board President Deborah White, and the entire team of staff and volunteers whose efforts have earned Taibu its well-deserved reputation. Taibu is a Kiswahili greeting that means be in good health. As we celebrate Black History Month, may we all be blessed with good health in the months and years to come. Taibu, merci beaucoup.
Bravo. The Honourable Member for Prince Albert.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate Ms. Cheryl Kimberly, 2016 Prince Albert Citizen of the Year. Cheryl was nominated for the award in appreciation of her commitment to the Prince Albert youth and her unending promotion of the Prince Albert community. Cheryl serves as the Prince Albert Grand Council Special Events Coordinator. She coordinates such events as Remembrance Day services, Fall Trapper events, Winter Festival, and the Prince Albert Grand Council's Fall Assembly. Outside of her position on the PAGC, Cheryl also sits on the organizing committee of the Prince Albert Winter Festival, serves as vice president of the Prince Albert Arts Council, sits on the Prince Albert Tourism Board, and helps organize a host of long list of local fundraising initiatives. What drives Cheryl is her love of her children and the love of her community. Her personal goal is to leave behind a healthy community. To Cheryl, being involved feeds your soul. It shows our children how to give back. She couldn't be more right. A banquet in Cheryl's honor is being held on February 4th to recognize her outstanding contributions to the city. Congratulations, Cheryl. On behalf of all members, I thank you for your commitment to our community.
The Honourable Member for Avalon.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to recognise the life of Mr. Ches Penny, a constituent, friend, prominent business leader in Newfoundland and Labrador. Mr. Penny passed away last Thursday and leaves behind his loving family, friends, business associates, and a legacy as one of the most successful business leaders of his time. As a young man, Mr. Penny was a true entrepreneur, successfully building the tremendous Penny Group of companies and playing a pivotal role in the construction, auto sales, energy services, and real estate sectors. He was not only a great businessman, but a champion of all that our province stands for. In recognising his contribution, Ches was awarded the Order of Canada, the Order of Newfoundland and Labrador, and an honorary doctorate from Memorial University. While Ches has passed, his name, memory, and legacy will live on for generations. Ches, after a full and busy life, may you rest in eternal peace. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Loire.
Monsieur le Président. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to take a moment today to pay tribute to a great man who dedicated his life to taking care of those around him. Jean-Guy Saint-Onge died suddenly on January 23rd at the age of 73. I first met Mr. Saint-Onge as an MP 5 years ago. He was a municipal councillor at Saint-Stanislas de Kotska, where he served his district for 30 years. He was very proud of his community and participated in all local activities there. For example, he was involved in the amalgamation of the region of Hungary Bay, in the program known as Municipalité Amie des Aînés, and the preservation of Lake Saint-François. He also spent many years working for the organization SABEC, a community volunteer ride service in Manchester that helps hundreds of people every year who don't own cars to receive health services. He was an admirable and kind individual. I send my deepest condolences to his better half, Nicole, his family, and the citizens of the Upper St. Lawrence. Rest in peace.
The Honourable Member for Surrey Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honour two men with very differing paths but very similar hearts. Chandra Badalia immigrated to Vancouver in 1976 and started his career as a photojournalist. In 4 decades, he documented the South Asian community's memories through over 3 million pictures and shared them to all without asking anything for exchange. When things took a turn for the worse, the community stood up. Thousands gathered from all over BC and opened their checkbooks as they saw Chandra as a brother in need. In that crowd was none other than the giant, Bruce Keller, a lumber tycoon but better known as the Desi Santa, a title affectionately given to him because of his giving heart and his affection to the South Asian community. He challenged the crowd that if they matched, he would give $100,000, as no one else had done so much to document the history of the community than Mr. Budalia. And did the crowd respond? Over $300,000 was collected that night, and two giants showed us all what passion, dedication, and most of all, being a human is all about.
The honourable member for Niagara Falls.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise in this chamber today prior to the third and final reading of my private member's bill, C-233, an act to establish a national strategy for Alzheimer's disease and other dementia. I wish to sincerely thank my colleagues on this side of the House and members from across the aisle for their support of this important legislation on behalf of 747,000 Canadians living with this terrible disease. Many of us have had to endure the very painful long goodbye of a loved one without the benefit of having a coordinated strategy. And I want to especially thank my colleague, the member for Don Valley West, for his backing in seeing that Bill C-233 becomes a reality. This nonpartisan cooperation from all parties is a shining example of what we can accomplish in this House when we work together for the greater good of Canadians. Thank you.
The honourable member for St. John's East.
Mr. Speaker, the Honourable P. Derek Lewis, lawyer, senator, and exceptional wit, passed away on January 19th. Derek was born in St. John's in 1924, where he practiced law until October of last year, a full 69 years since he was first admitted to the Newfoundland bar. He was among the world's most senior lawyers, and his dry wit belied a lifetime of confidences well kept. He was a living embodiment of hard work, so it was no wonder when Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau appointed Senator Lewis in 1978. And the Hansard is replete with evidence of his grace, humor, and humility. He is survived and mourned by his wife of 55 years, the amazing Grace, and his law partner and law clerk of 60 years, David C. Day, QC. Please rise with me to say thanks and to bid adieu to Senator Lewis.
Senator Lewis.
The Honourable Member for Thérèse de Blainville. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in the House today to talk about the movement led by the Chamber of Commerce of Thérèse de Blainville in favour of sustainable development through the improvement of highways 15 and 19. The plan is to complete these highways with bus lanes. This is an issue that affects the quality of life and economic development in the area of the Laurentians and Greater Montreal. Federal MPs, municipal and provincial representatives, and local players all mobilized around my petition on this subject. Because it's urgent that we take action on this. The timing is right now that the Government of Canada is funding infrastructure and public transport projects. I invite all citizens to sign my petition. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Bruce Grey, Owen Sound.
7 hours west of here in Bruce Grey, Owen Sound is beautiful Wharton, proud to call my hometown. There's a famous groundhog named Wharton Willie. He comes out February 2nd, sunny or chilly. He's not your regular plain brown woodchuck, a weather predictor. It's definitely not luck. Drop by and see Willie. You'll be impressed, because Willie don't charge cash for access. His glistening fur coat of ivory white fills all regular hogs with fear and fright. Shubenacadie Sam and Balzan Billy, they're just fakes. And Puxatawney Phil, probably a Liberal on the take. Mr. Speaker, this government so lost in a snowstorm, Willie wouldn't have backtracked on electoral reform. This morning in Wharton, right at 8:07, the sun did not shine from the heavens. With chants of Willie from the crowd, his prediction came out clear and loud. Across the nation, his words did ring. I, Wharton Willie, predict an early spring.
The honourable member for King Vaughan.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to share the good news that more residents in my riding will have access to fibre optic broadband thanks to a significant investment by the Government of Canada. On January 23rd, I was thrilled to announce on behalf of the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities $825,000 in funding to expand the fibre optic broadband network in King Township alone. Access to better, more reliable broadband will provide residents with new opportunities to participate in the digital economy. In partnership with communities, service providers, and other levels of government, we are working toward providing every family, farmer, senior, and student with access to a broadband service, increasing the potential for innovation and economic development. Notre gouvernement.
Mr. Speaker, our government recognizes that investing in infrastructure is essential to equipping municipalities with the building blocks that they need.
Thank you and merci.
The honourable member for London North Centre.
Mr. Speaker, it's an honour to pay tribute to the reservists of the Canadian Armed Forces. These groups of dedicated individuals play an integral role in support of the regular force, both in international and domestic operations. I would like to highlight especially the 1st Hussars, a regiment of the Canadian Army and a part of the 31 Canadian Brigade Group. Based in London and Sarnia, this historic group is comprised of dedicated and skilled soldiers and officers. They also have a thriving association of retired members, friends, and families. Under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Barry Scheid and supported by Honorary Colonel Barry Hogan and Honorary Lieutenant Colonel Larry Minnie, the 1st Hussars are tied to D-Day landings, various peacekeeping operations, and supporting the mission in Afghanistan. I would be remiss also, Mr. Speaker, if I didn't mention Joe Murray, who is a passionate defender of London's military history. Their motto is today, not tomorrow. I ask everyone in this House to show appreciation today for the work our reservists do in supporting our regular force to ensure we enjoy a peaceful, prosperous, and free tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Hear, hear. The honourable member for Lethbridge.
Mr. Speaker, February marks Black History Month. During this time, we pause to honour the legacy of Black Canadians. We celebrate the many contributions that have been made by Black Canadians throughout the years and the contributions that will be made in our future. One of my closest friends came to Canada only a few years ago from Tanzania. She has enriched the lives of all those who are fortunate enough to know her. Her joy and her smile are contagious. However, simply saying Black History Month seems to be too broad of a brushstroke. It fails to capture the diversity within the Black community. With so many nationalities, cultural traditions, family histories, the diversity of the Black experience is matched only by the diversity of our country, Canada, our home. To the Black community in Lethbridge and in all of Canada, thank you for adding to the mosaic that we call home. Thank you for enriching our community.
The honourable member for the Kingston and the Islands.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize an outstanding citizen from my riding of Kingston and the Islands, Mr. Jamshed Hassan. Jimmy, as he is more commonly known in Kingston, was born and raised in Pakistan. Many years ago, he chose to leave his life there in search for something new. After eventually settling in Kingston, Jimmy quickly became known for his outspoken love of our city and, more importantly, his ongoing pursuit of making Kingston an even better place to live. Mr. Speaker, 3 years ago, Jimmy started hosting a diversity dinner where he brings together people from all cultural backgrounds to share our experiences and learn from each other's cultural richness. This year, Jimmy brought together Kingstonians representing a vast array of cultures, including Ukraine, Russia, China, Japan, the Philippines, and of course, his homeland of Pakistan, to name a few. Mr. Speaker, Jimmy has been a light in the Kingston community and knows that diversity is our strength. And Jimmy, thank you for choosing Kingston. We're stronger because of you.
The honourable member for Skeena, Bulkley Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, it's Groundhog Day again, but when it comes to Liberals breaking promises, Canadians have seen this movie and they're not laughing. Canadians in the last election chose hope over experience with the Liberal Party. They said, this Liberal leader is different. He's not like the other Liberals who will say anything, do anything to get elected, but then once he gets in office, will just arrogantly break those promises, like his promise on electoral reform. Well, there's an old story, Mr. Speaker, of the frog and the scorpion. And there's a great flood, and the scorpion says to the frog, let me jump on your back to cross the river. I won't sting you. And the frog says, well, how can I trust you? You're a scorpion. Well, why would I, says the scorpion. It would be only to my own harm. And the frog says, I'll trust you one more time. And he jumps on his back, and halfway across the river, the scorpion stings him. And as they're drowning, the frog says, "Why did you do that?" And scorpion says, "It's my nature. I'm a scorpion." Well, when it comes to Liberals, we can always count on the nature of Liberals to look after Liberals, and it's only Canadians who end up getting stung.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, this week is the 27th annual edition of Suicide Prevention Week. The theme this year is Suicide is Not an Option. This is an issue that people in distress are increasingly talking about on the web, and it's one that I care about deeply. This week is an opportunity for us to show our support for our young people, our parents, our colleagues, and our friends. So I invite everyone in my riding and everyone in Quebec to take part in this movement and to tell their loved ones, suicide should never be an option. I'm here for you. I'd like to thank the Quebec Association for Suicide Prevention and all organizations involved in our regions all year long. If you are concerned about a loved one, please don't hesitate. Call for help by calling the hotline at 166-APPEL. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Orléans.
Mr. Speaker, it's with profound sadness that I rise today to mark the passing of Brigadier General William W. Turner, a decorated veteran and a family friend. Canada has seen the passing of a living legend. A native Victoria, British Columbia, General Turner served his nation as an artillery officer in World War II, as a peacekeeper, and later as Commandant of his beloved Royal Military College, and in latter life as the Colonel Commandant of the Royal Regiment of Canadian Artillery. Throughout his career, he was known as a gentleman of rare high intellect who would invest great efforts into passing on his vast knowledge to the next generation. I and thousands just like me owe it all to General Turner. We owe him a great debt of gratitude for his service to not only the Army, the Canadian Forces, but indeed to Canada. I extend my deepest sympathies to his wife of 65 years, less 2 days, Hope, to his sons, John and Bill Turner, both distinguished soldiers themselves and close personal friends of mine, and to his daughter, Hope, who herself married a combat veteran. Rest in peace.
Oral questions. Questions orales. L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, when he took power, the Prime Minister said that mandate letters were important for the cabinet members. And when you look at the letters for the Minister of International Trade and Global Affairs, international trade isn't a priority for the Prime Minister because he didn't put that in there, nor did he talk about the TPP, softwood lumber, or other agreements with Asia. So why is the Prime Minister not showing us that it's important to open up the borders? The Honourable Minister of International Affairs. Our government has an excellent record for serving Canadians when it comes to international trade. Canada signed CETA in October last year. In December 2015, the current government resolved the cool situation, and we have improved access for beef to China, and we've taken steps to help canola producers. We will continue to work tirelessly to help the middle class, and I will vigorously defend trade alongside my colleague.
John.
Mr. Speaker, this is not reassuring. How can they stand over there with a straight face and tell Canadians that they believe in free trade? The minister's mandate letters make no mention of softwood lumber agreement or trade with Asia-Pacific nations that were in PTP. Mr. Speaker, Canadian workers need this Liberal government to work in their best interest. When can we expect a new softwood lumber agreement and new markets for our exporters?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, more trade is more growth. More growth is more jobs for Canadians, Mr. Speaker. That's why this government will be relentless and will have an ambitious trade agenda, Mr. Speaker, to create jobs for Canadians, to open markets so that Canadian families and Canadians could be better in this country. We have an ambitious trade agenda, and we'll put it forward, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, Proof has shown us that the Liberal policies were ill-advised from the outset. Here's what the group of Canadian manufacturers said. Right now, Canada is not a competitive location for investment. Add this to the rapidly changing business environment in the United States, a primary competitor for investment, with the increased protectionism, and in fact the Canada's situation will only worsen. Why is the government going ahead with what it's planning to do? What steps will the government take to ensure that Canadian jobs will remain in Canada?
I'd like to remind the opposite member that when it comes to taking concrete steps, we extended the Automotive Innovation Fund in the 2016 budget. Not only did we extend this fund, we changed the terms, and because of that, we attracted a $500 million investment in the Honda plant in Alliston. Absolutely. This will secure 4,000 jobs, Mr. Speaker. That's taking concrete action, that's bringing investment in Canada, that's securing good quality jobs for the middle class, Mr. Speaker, and that's what we'll remain focused on, growing the economy, creating good quality jobs for Canadians.
The honourable member for Portage Lisgar.
Mr. Speaker, the call from a Liberal member of Parliament to legalize all drugs is very troubling. We know that the Liberals are going to be legalizing marijuana, but parents are concerned that they may be considering legalizing even more dangerous drugs. Unfortunately, the Prime Minister wasn't very clear on this yesterday, so I wonder if the Minister of Justice could tell us, after they legalize marijuana, what would be the next drug that they may be planning on legalizing?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, the approach of this government to drug policy is evidence-based, it's compassionate, it's collaborative, and it's comprehensive. When it comes to the matter of cannabis, we have made it very clear that we are going to legalize access to cannabis, but we are going to do so in a strict regulatory regime to keep marijuana out of the hands of children and the profits out of the hands of criminals.
Honourable member for Portage Lisgar.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal member for Beaches East York is on record calling for the legislation of all illegal drugs. Yesterday, the Prime Minister refused to denounce that position. So I would ask the Minister of Health, would she have the courage to stand today, denounce that position of that particular Liberal member of Parliament, and state for the record that the only drug the Liberals will be legalizing is marijuana? Please, be clear for Canadians.
Minister of Health.
Speaker, as I have just said, our approach to drug policy is evidence-based. We have made it very clear that we have plans to legalize access to cannabis and to strictly regulate it. We have plans to legalize no other substances, and we will work together to address the opioid crisis in a manner that is comprehensive, evidence-based, and responds to the needs of Canadians.
Honourable Député de Rosemont.
The honourable member Rosemont La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, during the election, the Liberals had promised to reform our election system, a system that was old, outdated, and ineffective. All of their candidates made the same promise. Once they were elected, the Prime Minister reiterated that several times, dozens of times. He even repeated it here in this House, in the throne speech, in the Minister's mandate letter, and in the mandate he sent to the committee. And you know what? We believed them. That was a mistake. The lesson is never believe a Liberal. They can go back on their word in the drop of a hat. If they're breaking their promises on our democracy, what will it be the next time? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The electoral system is the most fundamental pillar of our democracy. We respect the view of Canadians, and we held broad, vast consultations on this important issue. Canadians are proud of our democracy. We were clear. No major electoral reform should be undertaken if there isn't vast support by Canadians. Mr. Speaker, I'm enthusiastic at the idea of working with Canadians in order to strengthen our democracy. Thank you. Honourable member Rosemont La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, it's like you wake up in the morning and you have the impression you're reliving the same day over and over again. More Liberal backtracking, another flip-flop by the Prime Minister, another deception, another broken promise. It's as if it were Groundhog Day. The consensus is clear, Mr. Speaker. 90% of the experts and witnesses were in favour of a proportional system. That came out in the majority committee report, the town halls. Even people who responded to their survey wanted political parties to work together. It's all fine and well to consult, but why not listen to people? Why are the Liberals just looking after other Liberals? The Honourable Minister.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We listened to Canadians. We were clear. No change of this scope should be undertaken without vast support from Canadians. We held broad-ranging consultations. Town halls were held. The committee drafted its comprehensive report. Democracy.ca encouraged participation, and over 300,000 Canadians responded. Mr. Speaker, my work is to strengthen and reinforce our democratic institutions, and that is exactly the direction we're going in.
Member for Skeena Bulkley Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But what the Liberals are saying is simply not true. It's the exact opposite of the truth. It's in fact one of those alternative facts that they've suddenly grown so fond of. There was a consensus. It was the Liberals who just simply refused to listen to it. 90% of experts and Canadians who came before us, who testified, said they wanted a proportional representation system. The recommendation from the Bloc, the Greens, the Conservatives, New Democrats called for a plan to bring in proportional representation. Well, there was actually one party that stood in the way of that consensus, and that was the Liberal Party of Canada. So it's a bit rich when the Liberals claim that there's no consensus when it's only Liberals standing in the way of that very consensus.
The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
No question there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government will continue to act to strengthen our democracy. While we did not hear a consensus on a particular electoral system to replace the one we have now, Canadians were clear that we can do more to improve our democratic institutions. And what we did hear is that Canadians are proud of our democracy. That is why my new mandate letter includes protecting the integrity of our democracy by making our system less vulnerable to hacking and improving transparency by making parties' political fundraising more open than ever before. We will always work to ensure our democracy represents the values of Canadians.
Member for Skeena Bulkley Valley.
You know, the minister keeps talking about her mandate, but I don't actually think she understands what the word fully means, because the mandate of a government doesn't come from some piece of paper handed to them by the Prime Minister. The mandate comes from the democratic will expressed by the voters of this country. And let me quote the Prime Minister, who once said just a few months ago, over 60% of Canadians voted in favour of parties that committed to changing the electoral system. That, in fact, is true. That's the minister's mandate. That's this government's mandate. Is the Prime Minister so arrogant that he believes that he can change with a flick of a pen the mandate that was given to him by millions of Canadians?
Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is nothing more foundational than how we choose to govern ourselves as Canadians. We respect the views of Canadians and consulted extensively with them on this important issue. And we listened to Canadians, and we heard that Canadians are proud of our democracy. We have been clear. Major reforms to the electoral system should not be made if they lack the broad support of Canadians. I look forward to working with Canadians to continue to strengthen our democracy.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just before Christmas, on December 23rd, the Department of Finance published a document that concluded two very alarming things for the future of Canada. If nothing changes, we are heading towards an accumulated debt of $1.5 trillion in 2015 and balancing the budget in 2055, and that makes no sense. In order to resolve the situation, the government has a choice between two options. Either it takes control over spending or it increases taxes. Can the minister ensure us and tell Canadians that he will finally regain control over public financing? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, we have a plan to improve the situation in the future, and that's not in the Department of Finance's report. We are investing in the future of our country, investments in infrastructure, innovation, ways to stimulate growth, and that way we will have a better situation in the future, more work for Canadians, and an economy that works for everyone.
Louis Saint-Laurent.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal plan is simply not working. For 15 months they've been in power, 15 months that the economy's been stagnant, and we're heading towards a deficit that will be huge, and that's unacceptable. The minister has refused to tell us that he won't take control over public financing. I'll ask him again. Can he tell us that the Liberal government will not impose new taxes on Canadians in the upcoming budget. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, what I can say is that we started with tax cuts for the middle class. That was the first thing that we did. And it's interesting to see that the member was with a party that voted against those measures. So that means, well, in fact, we're going to continue to work on improving the situation for Canadians, improving things for the middle class with more money in their pockets for their families.
Carleton.
While the Prime Minister has broken his promise on deficits and electoral reform, he is keeping his promise to, quote, transition away from manufacturing-based employment. Yesterday's Manufacturers and Exporters report said, and I quote, right now Canada is not a competitive location for investment. Increases in business taxes, regulatory demands, energy costs are making it more difficult and costly to do business in Canada. And there are new carbon and payroll taxes to come. Why is this government taxing 1.7 million manufacturing workers out of their jobs?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I want to just keep repeating the fact that we're actually the government that reduced taxes on middle-class Canadians. We know we have a competitive corporate tax rate in this country. We know that it's important to continue to make investments in innovation in our economy. We know it's important to continue to focus on how we can help Canadians to get the skills they need in our economy. That is our intention, and I'm very much looking forward to Budget 2017 to continue that message for Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
I'm not sure if the Minister heard, but the question was actually about manufacturing. It's an industry that employs 1.7 million Canadians. And you might have also noticed that yesterday the association that represents those jobs indicated that Canada is moving from 7th most favourable environment in which to manufacture to 10th, while the Americans are moving from 3rd to 1st, and that's before the new payroll and carbon taxes the government is introducing. South of the border, they're cutting taxes and regulation to unleash the potential of free markets. When will this government realize that if we don't get down to business over here, the Americans are going to eat us for lunch?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation, Science and Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to harmonization of regulations, reducing barriers, this has been a key priority for our government, and that's why I've been working with my provincial and territorial counterparts to sign a Canada Free Trade Agreement. We have an agreement in principle. We announced that agreement in July. We will provide the details of that agreement, and that'll create an environment for our manufacturers to grow and expand in Canada so they can compete globally, create good quality jobs, Mr. Speaker. That's how we're delivering for our manufacturing sector. Those 1.7 million jobs, we'll make sure we'll continue to grow and expand that industry.
Well, Member for South Surrey White Rock.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this morning the Parliamentary Budget Officer released a report called Follow the Money, stating that the Liberals' infrastructure plan has no way to measure performance, has virtually no transparency on how the money is being spent, has shortchanged communities by $9 billion for local infrastructure, and the Liberal plan to stimulate the Canadian economy has failed. Will the minister commit to flowing the $9 billion to communities before spring construction begins?
Minister of Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, we appreciate the work of the Parliamentary Budget Office to monitor spending as well as inform Canadians and the Parliament. Since taking office, our government, in partnership with municipalities and provinces, approved 1,200 projects with combined investment of $14 billion, Mr. Speaker. These investments are helping the design and planning work in Ottawa's LRT, Edmonton's LRT, Calgary's LRT. As a matter of fact, in members' own city of in Surrey, planning work is being done with these resources to expand the LRT work in our own municipality.
Good news. Good. La députée de Richmond, Arthabaska.
The Honourable Member for Richmond, Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, in the report on infrastructure prepared by the Parliamentary Budget Officer, we learn that the government runs the risk of not achieving its economic growth targets following deficits spiraling out of control, tax hikes, broken promises, the Prime Minister's conflict of interest. Now we learn that the infrastructure plan simply doesn't work. What is the Minister of Infrastructure waiting for to free up the $9 billion shortfall that would make it possible to undertake projects across Canada? Mr. Speaker, the party is over.
Infrastructure.
The Honourable Minister of Infrastructure.
Since the introduction of Budget 2016, we concluded bilateral agreements with each province and territories within very short amount of time. Since doing that, we have approved 1,200 projects with combined investment of $14 billion. More projects we approved in 1 year than the previous government did in 5 years together. That is our track record, Mr. Speaker, and that's exactly what we're delivering on. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
The Prime Minister claims he's a defender of human rights, yet he won't speak up against Trump's racist ban. What's worse, once rejected by the U.S., those refugees cannot make a claim in Canada because of the Third Safe Country Agreement. So much for hashtag Canada, welcome to Canada. Canadians no longer have confidence the U.S. is a safe haven for refugees. If we don't suspend the agreement, Canada will be complicit in this discriminatory ban. So will the government immediately suspend the Safe Third Country Agreement? Yes or no?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees
Canada
and
continues to
Citizenship.
remain a compassionate and generous country. We have one of the most compassionate and generous refugee systems in the world. The Safe Third Country Agreement with the United States enables both countries to better handle their asylum claims. The executive order has no impact on asylum claims made in either country, but we continue to monitor the situation, and we will continue to be a country that is open to refugees and protected persons.
The Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Mr. Speaker, it sounds like the Minister and the government don't see that things have happened since last week. They're simply sticking their head in the sand, and that's not the solution. How can we have confidence that refugees will be treated adequately and respectfully in the United States following their executive order on immigration as a result? Here is the question. Will the government commit to immediately suspending the Safe Third Party Agreement with the United States? Yes or no? The Honourable Minister of Immigration.
The opposite should know or ought to know that the Safe Third Country Agreement pertains to domestic asylum seekers and has no relevance to resettled refugees. Having said that, Canada has a system in place that is considered to be the most generous and compassionate in the world. We in Canada and the United States view the Safe Third Country Agreement as a proper system to handle local asylum seekers, and we continue to be an open and generous country to those seeking protection and refuge.
Honourable Member for Lethbridge.
Mr. Speaker, the primary responsibility of the Minister for Status of Women should be providing vulnerable women with the resources they need, many of whom are forced to seek shelter or refuge in women's shelters across Canada, which of course are desperate for resources. In his mandate letter to the Minister, the Prime Minister said, quote, "It is important that we acknowledge mistakes when we make them." Will the Minister now admit that spending over $1 million on luxury offices to make her more comfortable is a mistake and a betrayal of vulnerable women?
Honourable Minister of the Status of Women.
Mr. Speaker, our government has made gender equality a key priority with the appointment of a historic gender-balanced cabinet and of the first ever full minister for status of women. Previous ministers responsible for the status of women were also ministers of departments that already had an office. Being located in the same building as the department, as is the standard across government, will ensure departmental and ministerial operations run more efficiently. I look forward to working with the member opposite to further the opportunities for women and girls in this country.
The Honourable Member for Beauport, Côte-de-Beaupré, Île-d'Orléans, Charlevoix. Mr. Speaker, we've had enough of these prefabricated answers. We want real answers today. The former minister responsible for the status of women dispensed the modest sum of $1.1 million to renovate her office. Many organizations that help women could have used that money to help women. Can the minister responsible for the status of women explain why those renovations were a priority instead of helping women who urgently need assistance? The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, I appreciate the opportunity to reiterate that this is the first time that there's ever been a full Minister of Status of Women. Yes. In previous governments, the minister responsible for status of women had another place to work within. That said, Mr. Speaker, let's talk about what the minister before me and the team have been working on since we formed government. We are working and have engaged with experts, academics, those with lived experience to bring forward the first ever federal strategy to address gender-based violence. We're expanding the services of the status of women across the country and more. I look forward to working with the member opposite.
The Honourable Member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Well, Mr. Speaker, status of women didn't have enough money in their budget for office renovations, but they started them anyway and then had to get $900,000 from supplementary estimates for the $1.1 million project. Mr. Speaker, would the minister describe this as responsible management of the budget and of taxpayers' money?
Honourable Minister of the Status of Women.
Mr. Speaker, the construction was completed on time, within budget, and follows the government's workplace standards to optimize office space accommodations. As the first government to introduce a full minister responsible for the status of women, I'm looking forward to working with the member opposite as the chair of the committee responsible for this work. We've restored advocacy to the scope of activities that can be supported by the Women's Program, the granting body, and we believe will help make better decisions and impact. And we're committed to ensuring that a full gender-based analysis is done across policies and programs to ensure that women and girls are at the heart of all our efforts.
Equal member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, starting to build before you know how many people are going to be in the office is what we call bad project management. Canadians expect that when the minister goes back to taxpayers for additional emergency funding, it would be used for things such as emergency shelters for vulnerable women. But no, to these Liberals, an emergency is building luxury offices to make themselves more comfortable. In those same supplementary estimates, can the minister confirm how much funding the Liberals requested for women's shelters in Canada?
Honourable Minister of the Status of Women.
Mr. Speaker, after 10 years of neglect by the previous government, we are finally making progress to ensure that women and girls thrive in...
Order. Order. My question's been asked. The Honourable Minister is in the process of answering. I'm sure there are members in this House that would like to hear the answer, and we'll give the Minister the floor and we'll continue on. The Honourable Minister of the Status of Women.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're finally working to ensure and making progress so that all women and girls have an opportunity to thrive in this country. We are investing in shelters, transitional homes, and affordable housing to allow women to be safe, and we are also developing the first ever federal strategy to address gender-based violence. This, Mr. Speaker, is a cause that transcends party lines and departments. I'm looking forward to working with all members to ensure that we reach our common goal.
Honourable Member for Essex.
Mr. Speaker, hundreds of thousands of Canadian jobs depend on trade with the United States, but the Liberals' silence on their priorities for NAFTA renegotiations is deafening. Canadians want fair trade that benefits all Canadians, not just a few at the top. This government's first priority must be protecting Canadian jobs in trade-dependent industries like softwood lumber, auto, steel, agriculture, and dairy. Today, the U.S. has started the clock on renegotiations. So when will the Liberals come clean to Canadians about what's on the table?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I do want to start by commenting on Tuesday, which was a historic day in this House. I didn't have a chance to speak then, and I had no questions yesterday. So I just want to quickly thank the members from Saint Laurent and Markham Thornhill for their decades of service to their constituents. I think we all honour them, and I'm looking forward to working with them in their new roles. As for the question, it is incorrect that the clock was started today by the U.S. That has not happened. And of course, our priority is jobs for Canadians.
Honourable Member for Berthier-Maskinongé. Order.
Mr. Speaker, dairy producers in Quebec are worried about the renegotiation of NAFTA under the Liberals, and I can understand them, given this government's inaction when it comes to diafiltered milk. This American product is threatening our supply management system, and it's led to the loss of millions of dollars. And that's on top of the breach opened by CETA. We know the Prime Minister's promises are empty, but can he promise Canadians that when it comes to renegotiating NAFTA, he'll defend supply management? The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. As Minister of International Trade, I worked very closely with Quebec's ministers on CETA and with Quebec companies like Bombardier, with the forestry sector and other Quebec interests. I am very aware of the interests of Quebec and of Canada, and I will defend all of our interests, all of our workers, all of our agricultural producers, as I always have.
For Laurentide Labelle.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Access to broadband and reliable internet service is important for today's economy. In rural and remote communities, such as my riding of Laurentide-Labelle, we don't have the infrastructure needed to support adequate broadband service. And my constituents were excited to hear the government's pledge in Budget 2016 for broadband internet.
Economic development provide this House with an update on this critical issue for all of rural Canada. Thank you, Mr.
Bravo. Innovation, science, and economic development.
Merci au député de Laurent.
I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for Laurentide-Labelle for his question.
It's essential for living, working, and competing in a digital world. And for Canadians in rural and remote regions, access to high-speed internet can unlock tremendous economic potential. And that is why we launched a $500 million program called Connect to Innovate to provide high-speed broadband internet connectivity across communities, across Canada, and various communities. And we want to make sure this will help 300 rural and remote communities, and we want to ensure as many Canadians as possible benefit. That is why we're extending the application deadline to April the 20th. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Full member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's good friend and lobbyist Tim Barber of Canada 2020 was on Twitter earlier this week posting pictures and bragging that Canada 2020 has new space in the parliamentary precinct. I can't make this stuff up, Mr. Speaker. I wish it was fake news, but sadly it's real. Will the Prime Minister commit today to end taxpayer support for his friends at Canada 2020 and ensure no government department or agency contributes any more money to this partisan Liberal organization?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the opportunity to answer the member's question, and I can assure all members and Canadians that when we work as a government, we work in the best interest of Canadians. We will make decisions that will help us advance the work that they have elected us to do, and we will ensure that we make investments that will help grow the economy, create the jobs to support Canadians.
Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That's true.
Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
So that's a no. The money is going to keep flowing to their friends. The Prime Minister gives special access to billionaires and lobbyists at Cash for Access fundraisers. He awards his friends at Canada 2020 with government contracts, taxpayer money for conferences, and lavish island vacations. The Prime Minister promised Canadians that he would defend their interests, but it seems the only interests he is concerned about are his own and his Liberal friends and insiders. Will the Prime Minister commit today to dictate to each and every one of his ministers to cut funding to Canada 2020?
The Honourable Minister of Science.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the question. Our government values science and the important work our scientists do. The Social Scientists, Humanities and Research Council has a mandate to share and promote research to Canadians. As I've said, the granting councils are an arm's-length organization. It is able to issue contracts below a certain dollar amount. This contract fell below the amount, and the decision was made by the Granting Council. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, for an organization to be independent, well, it can't have any ties to a political party. Now, in the case of Canada 2020, it's clear that if the chair of the Canada 2020 think tank is married to the president of the Liberal Party of Canada, and that he's the childhood friend of the Prime Minister, that the organization is not at all independent. Once again, it's clear that this Prime Minister believes that he's above the law and lacks ethics and judgment. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister stop funding his childhood friend's think tank, Canada 2020? The Honourable Minister of Science.
Mr. Speaker, again, our government values science and the scientists and the important work they do. The opposition is trying to manufacture a scandal where one does not exist. And frankly, I think Canadians see right through this. Social Sciences Humanities Research Council is an arm's-length body. It has the ability to issue contracts below a certain dollar amount. This contract fell below that amount, and the granting council made a decision.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, yesterday, the Minister of Science claimed that Canada 2020 was indeed an independent organization. Now, we all know that science is based on facts, so here's some facts. 1. The President of Canada 2020 is married to the President of the Liberal Party of Canada. 2nd, the President and his wife were on holidays with the Prime Minister over the holidays. And 3rd, Canada 2020 organized an event in Washington for the Prime Minister and received $15,000 in public funds. Mr. Speaker, does the Minister of Science agree with me that 1 + 1 + 1 = 3, and that they have to stop funding Canada 2020?
Order.
The Honourable Minister of Science.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think my honourable colleague heard the answer. The Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council is an arm's-length organization. Its mandate is to share and promote research with Canadians. As I've said, the Granting Council has the ability to issue contracts below a certain dollar amount. This contract fell below the dollar amount, and the Granting Council made a decision. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Desnathy, Mississippi Churchill River.
Black Lake, Saskatchewan fears for the lives of the young members of our community. In the last 6 weeks, 30 young people have attempted suicide. Last week, one succeeded. These young people cannot afford more broken promises, Mr. Speaker. Words are meaningless and action is needed now. There are less mental health services available and there are more cuts. Will the Prime Minister urgently increase funding for the Athabasca Health Authority for Black Lake and other communities in the area?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Speaker, I thank the member for the important question. The roots of the suicide crisis in Indigenous communities are deep and complex. We are working hard with our partners in those communities to address this crisis. In fact, we have provided an additional $69 million in mental wellness funding. This means 24 new mental wellness teams. There are already 3 new crisis intervention teams that are at work in various parts of the country, and there's a 24/7 Hope for Wellness line, which is available in 5 languages. We will continue to do the good work to provide hope for these communities.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi, Bay James, Nunavik, AU.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, just one day after publicly announcing that the government would finally end all litigation concerning the 60s scoop, well, guess what? The government was in court to argue against the Marsha Brown case. My question is very simple, Mr. Speaker. Will the minister finally, immediately, abandon the government's defense before the courts and recognize that Canada has, and has always had, the duty to protect the cultural identity of Indigenous children? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Indigenous Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for his question. I think we have said it again and again as a government that we would prefer negotiation over litigation at any time. It's our preferred route to settle differences, especially those of historic wrongs with Indigenous people in this country. That's why our government has launched negotiations towards a national resolution to the 60 scoop litigation. That's why as well, Mr. Speaker, we feel that these are important resolutions to have if we're able to move forward with reconciliation with all Indigenous people in Canada, and we will keep working towards that goal and that path.
Member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday it was revealed that the new Minister of Foreign Affairs was given different instruction than her predecessor. Specifically, troop deployments will now be based solely on Canada's national interest. It makes you wonder what they were basing them on before. For months, we've been asking the Liberals to explain how their intention to send our troops on a UN mission in Africa serves our national interests. So can the minister confirm that the previous peacekeeping plans are now on hold, or have the Liberals abandoned them completely?
Good question. The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
I'd like to thank the member opposite for his question, and I do look forward to working with him. We've done a lot of work together in the past. I agree strongly with the member opposite that, of course, it is absolutely correct for all of the actions of the government to be in the national interest, and as foreign minister, that will be my North Star. When it comes to peacekeeping, Canada is a determined peace builder. We believe in peace, and we believe in our role in multilateral organizations. As to specific missions, that is something which the government is currently considering. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Charlevoix-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has given a new mandate to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Now, any foreign deployment of Canadian troops must be in Canada's national interest, and that's exactly what we always did in the past. Given this new vision and the Prime Minister's rushed commitment to deploy 600 soldiers on a peacekeeping mission to Africa where there is no peace to keep, can the Minister please explain where is Canada's national interest in this African mission? The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. I would like to thank the Honourable Member for the question. I already answered in English, but it's a pleasure to try in French. When it comes to the national interest, as Minister of Foreign Affairs, it is my privilege to defend Canada's national interests, and I will always try to do that. In terms of peacekeeping, our government is committed to keeping peace, and we will continue to ensure that Canada plays a role in peacekeeping missions, and we are currently looking at the role that Canada can play. Thank you.
For Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, it has become clear this week that Vladimir Putin is testing the resolve of Western democracies and the new American president. The Russian-backed war in eastern Ukraine continues to intensify, pushing some communities to the brink of humanitarian disaster. Yesterday, as Ukraine assumed the rotating presidency of the UN Security Council, the permanent council member sponsoring the war had the temerity to urge restraint. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals say they're considering options. How about some action?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, as I'm sure the member opposite is aware, I am watching the situation near Avdiivka. As I'm sure the honourable member is aware, I'm watching the situation near Avdiivka very, very carefully, and I've been in close touch with our excellent ambassador, Roman Vashchuk, in Kiev. It is an issue of utmost concern, and we condemn the actions of the Russian-backed separatist forces there. As I have said earlier this week, we are looking closely together with my colleague, the Minister of Defence, on Operation Unifor, which I think has done excellent work thus far.
Honourable Member for New Brunswick Southwest.
Mr. Speaker, I hear a lot about infrastructure needs from citizens and municipalities in my riding of New Brunswick Southwest. Citizens want better roads, access to public transit, clean drinking water, and affordable housing. Our municipalities want to offer all of these things while also leading the way fighting climate change. Municipalities are pleased with our government's commitment to invest in infrastructure, but they want to know how the federal government will help them to plan for the future. Could the minister tell this House how the government will support our municipalities in this important goal? Thank you.
Good question. Oh, Minister of Infrastructure and Communities.
First of all, I would like to convey that our thoughts are with the people of New Brunswick as they recover from the ice storm there. Today, our government and FCM announced 2 new programs. These programs will raise awareness about asset management practices, making smart, long-term infrastructure decisions. These programs will also help municipalities fight climate change and transition towards low-carbon communities. I encourage all members to tell their communities about these 2 initiatives. We are proud of our partnership with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and cities from coast to coast to coast. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are playing politics with the lives of Canadians. Yesterday, Conservatives agreed unanimously to support portions of Bill C-37 to to ensure that important life-saving measures could be implemented immediately. We ask that the controversial elements of forcing communities to accept heroin injection sites without proper consultation be further debated so that Canadians could have their voices heard. Will the Liberals stop playing politics and allow portions of the bill, which have all party support, be adopted in this House today?
Yes.
Honourable Minister of Health.
I thank the member for this question. It gives me an opportunity to share with all members of this House some very good news that, in fact, this is not a political matter. This is a very serious matter, a matter of saving lives. And I'm very happy to report that not only with the support of the vote that took place yesterday to pass second reading, all parties agreed today in committee to expedite the passage through committee of Bill C-37 to save lives and get the work done.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, in the election campaign, the Liberals made big promises, including for electric transport. They even promised that they would install charging stations in the parking lots of federal buildings across the country, and we believed them. But we're still waiting. And this isn't just any old promise. This is an environmental emergency. Mr. Speaker, I'm really proud to be the NDP's critic for electrified transport, but I have to say that, honestly, it's not clear who across the way I'm supposed to be critiquing. Is there anyone over there, please, who could tell me if and when this government will keep this promise?
The Honourable Secretary of Parliament.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
Our government continues to support innovation around things like electric charging stations and electric vehicles. And indeed, I personally had the opportunity to test drive an electric vehicle while I attended the conference in Montreal. We know that they are the next version of some of the energy-saving opportunities we have around carbon, reducing our carbon footprint, and we continue to support those innovators that are moving this forward. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for St. John Rothsay.
Mr. Speaker, homelessness is a terrible, preventable situation lived by too many Canadians. I was proud to see our government increasing the Homeless Partnering Strategy funding by $111.8 million. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to Housing and Urban Affairs give us an update of our government's work on this very important file? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Monsieur le Président. I'd like to thank the member of St. John's Rothsay for his concern and advocacy on this issue, and in particular his strong support for the outflow and Coverdale shelters in his riding. Homelessness affects all of our communities, and all of us have a role to play in ending it. Yesterday, we announced the call for nominations to establish an advisory council of experts, stakeholders to help this government as it reviews and renews the Homeless Partnership Strategy. This committee, which I will chair, will have members chosen through an open and a transparent process. Canadians with lived experience, people with knowledge of the program and who deliver frontline services will be encouraged to apply. I'd also stress that Indigenous and Inuit voices must be heard through this process. Check canada.ca for information. Thank you.
Honourable Member from Longueuil, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Mr. Speaker, if the Liberal government hadn't proposed arbitrary dates for the Connect to Innovate program, well, they should have listened to the regions of Quebec and Canada. If they had listened to them, they wouldn't have had to change the date as they did today. It's clear that the minister from the GTA doesn't understand Canada's rural communities, and could the minister not add 2 or 3 additional months to the program, because municipalities are going to have a hard time meeting even the new deadline to get into the Connect to Innovate program? And Mr. Speaker, we have major problems with cell connectivity in our regions. I'd like to ask the Minister, when will that be fixed? The Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
I'd like to thank the member for again talking about the Connect to Innovate program. We had extensive consultations with municipalities and stakeholders when we designed the program. We actually announced the program in our 2016 budget, so people are well aware of this initiative and our government's commitment to deal with that digital divide, to make sure we invest in our rural and remote communities. This is a significant investment, Mr. Speaker, and when leveraged with the private sector, it has the potential of $1 billion investment, and this is significant for our regions, and we are listening to our regions, and that is why we extended the date, Mr. Speaker, to April the 20th. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Yes, Mr. Speaker, I will be very brief but very clear. Will the government respect Quebec's demand and formally commit to compensating all losses for our dairy and cheese producers before, and I say before, the vote on the free trade agreement with Europe. The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
My colleague's question, and I think she's fully aware that this government has been consulting the dairy farmers right across the country, including Quebec. And with that consultation, we put a program in place that involved $350 million in order to make sure that the dairy farmers are innovative and the processing sector is innovative, Mr. Speaker. We have worked with the supply management sector, and particularly the dairy sector, and we will continue to work and support the dairy sector.
The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. Mr. Speaker, the free trade agreement with Europe could be of great benefit to Quebec, and we have the opportunity to be a bridge between Europe and the Americas. But we can't at the same time leave our fellow citizens behind. We won't support the agreement if the government sacrifices our dairy and cheese producers. Canada-Europe relations should not be built on the backs of families in our regions. Will the government fully compensate our producers in Quebec for their losses and not simply see them as collateral damage? The Honourable Minister of International Trade. Mr. Speaker, my colleague knows very well that CETA is in the national interest and that we have heard all Canadians. Mr. Speaker, I can assure you of one thing. Trade brings growth. Growth brings jobs. Across Canada, we will continue to listen to our agriculture producers. We will continue to have a vision of trade that is good for the whole country.
Ça va conclure la période de questions.
That concludes question period for today.
And now I think the official opposition House Leader will maybe have a question in the usual Thursday question. The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Thank you. I do have a question. I just want to ask the government, Mr. Speaker, in regards to the business for this week and the next week. But, Mr. Speaker, you may recall before we rose for the Christmas break, I asked the government if they would consider a take-note debate regarding the job situation in Canada and specifically the job losses in the energy sector. So I'm asking the House Leader if she would please let us know, again, the business for this week, for next week, and when we'll be able to have that important take-note debate. Thank you.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This afternoon, we will continue the debate that we undertook this morning regarding the Conservative Party's motion. Tomorrow, we will start the report stage debate for C30 on CETA. Monday, we will resume study of this bill.
Also continue the second reading debate of Bill C-36